Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
I am Mike Forrester, and it's going to be a very, very visual YouTube show. I feel bad for the podcast listeners, Adam, but you know what, to be honest, just come on back and watch it. Come on back and see what we got putting on here.
We're broadcast professionals. We're going to paint audio pictures for your ears. We're like the character in Hot Rod, Chris Parnell's character. We believe in the experience of AM radio, not this newfangled FM stuff.
I've been drinking green tea all day. Well, first of all, I did it again. We talked about this. We have a guest, Brandon Wainerdi of Talking Bay 94. I am so excited to have you on because you are a former Mondo employee. You have a great podcast that's like, you're in the industry, man, and we're talking about posters, and I knew that you were the guy to talk to. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me. And yes, if there's one thing I can talk about, it is posters, and other thing is Star Wars. So this is perfect, really.
This is absolutely it. And I was laughing because we had a guest on last week, and I was riffing on some other podcasts that talk among the two hosts, and then they forget that there's like someone there that also needs to be introduced. So they're just like sitting there awkwardly, like, should I jump in? And people are, who's that guy? So we're happy to have you, Brandon.
Yeah.
So give us a little background. This episode is more a me, Mike focused episode rather than Adam is taking a backseat to this one. He's going to be taken on a journey of visual.
I'm in shotgun in the host mobile. It's all good.
And I love that you are my goose today, and that's what
I am taller than you.
That's
so
true.
ratio wise, Maverick and Goose.
A little bit of a must. Yeah, or you could be depending on what Top Gun we're going for. You could be my rooster today. I could be the antagonist. I could be the co-star. Who knows? Yeah, and that's good. But this episode in particular, I think, Brandon, you and I are both in a private commission, and that's where I think I reached out to you and said, dude, we got to do this. We got to do this podcast episode. So give me a little bit, first of all, as we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. But Brandon, give me a little bit of background for people who are, you're kind of in the industry adjacent. Yeah. Give me your background on what it is that you do.
Yeah. I've done a lot in my quote unquote career over the past decade or so. I worked for Fangoria for a long time, the horror magazine, and did the marketing there. And then from there, Mondo reached out. Actually, Alamo Drafthouse reached out, and they're like, hey, we know that you've been lining up for these art gallery shows, and we also know that you know how to do marketing for geek things. Can you come on board and help with Mondo marketing? And that was about 2021, I think, is when I came on for Mondo and helped with their marketing for a while, which was really great to kind of pull back the curtain. Sure. And be a part of that world. But I had been going to shows since I was in college and lining up and buying stuff and collecting posters underneath my bed in a flat file. And so it's been really fun. And now I work for Funko, which acquired Mondo a couple years ago, and then separately I host a Star Wars podcast where I interview cast and crew of Star Wars, and I write for StarWars.com and Star Wars Insider, and a Star Wars book that I co-wrote is coming out in a month, the Star Wars Encyclopedia, and that's me. That is who I am.
Dude, I have a question.
Awesome.
Yes.
/favor, if it can be done.
Okay.
Through your contacts at StarWars.com.
Okay.
2 things.
I'm writing it down.
Well, just one thing.
Legitimately.
Okay, here we go. We're going to boil it down already.
Yeah.
Sure.
Years ago, I guess in 2005, it was right when Revenge of the Sith came out. When my band was successful enough that people cared enough to give me the opportunity to do an interview for StarWars.com.
Sure.
And I did one about Revenge of the Sith, but it's since gone.
Okay.
And I go in the Wayback Machine, I try to find it, but I can't find it because I don't know exactly when and whatever. I assume everything is archived.
Yeah.
Is there a contact there? I mean, it can be like literally a PDF.
I will text my editor. I'll text my editor. I'll see what they can do.
That's the old internet. That is the old internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grid days.
We'll find it.
Dope.
Okay.
Well, thank you in advance.
That's what we'll try. I'm saying that now. We're live. I have to be polite.
Sure, right. No, people are going to tweet at you tomorrow and be like,
Sure,
"Hey, did you
where
find
is
Adam's
it? They haven't been able to
article? Like,
find
what's
it
going
yet."
on, man?" Yeah.
No, I'll send the email tomorrow. We'll see what happens.
I love that. So, well, first of all, I mean, this book, let's not understate
Oh,
how
sure.
awesome this book is, because I think for a lot of people, we're very visual on the show today, but most importantly, this is kind of an updated version. This is DK, the publisher DK, that I think people are used to the dictionaries that come out either within the movie, and it's got kind of the rundown of everything from the movie. That we use visual dictionaries as costumers and also as fans to kind of get the stuff that didn't make it to the screen, but it's part of the lore, right? This is, what are the tools that are actually in Boba Fett's toolkit? You know what I mean? And so is this the ultimate version? Is this the updated version? Is this the Star Wars as we know it as of today version?
Yeah, this is an updated version of Ultimate Star Wars, which if you go and read those, it's very much an encyclopedia in the sense that it is name, paragraph, ship name, paragraph, planet name, paragraph. But it's across, because I worked on specifically I was on a team of a bunch of people that worked on it a summer ago. And I specifically did Rise of Skywalker updates and comics and books.
Okay.
So all of that is in there up until we hit send. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, and I read a lot of comic books. I'll say that I read a lot of comic books to prepare for this. So it's really exciting. I heard it's because I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay.
But people that have gotten it say that it is very big and big enough to use as a doorstop. So it's very exciting to hear.
So, like an updated full universe version of like one of these things?
Let's see.
Oh, here we go. Here we
nervous.
go.
Off screen.
Here we go.
I'm gonna shoot it down. We'll say no. Yes, that is almost exactly correct.
The Ultimate Star Wars Visual Guide is what this says for listeners.
I believe that is. Open it for me, because it's either that or Ultimate Star Wars. Like, what does a page look like? This is really good visual.
Oh yeah, here we go.
It's a little bit more text heavy. I'll be honest. It's a little bit more text heavy. A little less pictures.
More like an encyclopedia.
More like an encyclopedia.
Okay.
But very close. You pulled the correct vein for sure.
That is awesome. So how did you get assigned those movies and that project in particular?
It was the project itself. I was reached out to, and it was a crazy reach out. It was actually during Star Wars Celebration London that I was connected with DK by a good friend of mine, and she was like, "You need to meet DK," and I was like, "Yeah, sure," because I'd been obviously writing a little bit before for StarWars.com and Insider and a few other official publications,
right?
And then it all kind of worked out, and they sent me an email after Celebration, and then we kind of got rolling, and it was just it was a very intensive Google Doc with a bunch of very talented people in there typing away for a summer. But it was very cool to kind of be a part of that, especially like the book that you just pulled out. Like, I grew up reading those and poring over all those DK books, like you were saying, and it was kind of cool to put a tiny bit of my own spin to it.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we've had Charles and Heather Antos, and we've had some comic people on who have contributed to Star Wars in a big way. I mean, we were lucky enough to get Heather to come on and talk about Chrysanthemum when he had premiered, and I made sure to go and pick up the books as soon as I knew that Chrysanthemum was going to be in the show, and it's really incredible at how many fans are involved in these projects that grew up as fans, and so to come full circle for a lot of people, I think it's just one of the coolest parts about Star Wars right now.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, I grew up reading like Star Wars Insiders and all the behind the scenes things. And so even being able to do a tiny bit of that now is really, really great. I'm very, very proud of that.
That is awesome. Well, in terms of turning the tide for Star Wars, I truly don't think that we can say Star Wars without talking about what Star Wars is visually for so many people, because I think I'm a creative director at my day job, and I'm also a graphic designer. And so Mondo, for me, when I discovered the world of alternative posters, right, which I think really was 22 2009, 2010 was when I think things really started to emerge. I think this is when, the internet is reaching out in different ways. This is Facebook turning into the marketing machine as we know it. And it was like I felt like I was getting plugged into this artist community. There was a small community called Dribble. There was all these things that just, this is the peak of this is Pinterest turning into something. This is also Tumblr, and like you're just overwhelmed with images, and Mondo is rising to the top for me at this time. So for people who don't know what we're talking about when we say Mondo, give us a little like elevator pitch on what the Mondo gallery was.
Yeah. Mondo was based in Austin, is based in Austin. It was an offshoot of Alamo Drafthouse initially, way before even I was clued into what they were doing. They were just a small little nook at one of the Alamo Drafthouse theaters, and they were just churning out screen printed posters for different movie events that were happening at that theater. And then it kind of grew and grew and grew. Different artists, made different posters. It started off very unlicensed, and then as they grew and they became more and more popular, like you were talking about on Pinterest or on Reddit or whatever it might have been, then they got keyed into a lot of the studios. And I think actually it ties into what we're talking about. One of the first big licensed shows that Mondo did at their art gallery was this giant, I think it was 2010 Star Wars show. And we'll go through a few of the posters they did then, because it still is some of the greatest Star Wars art of all time. And then that kind of inspired a bunch of other galleries that we'll also talk about, I'm sure. And then Mondo itself sprung into doing vinyl and toys and collectibles, and just kind of took over in terms of what it meant to be like a high-end pop culture collectible.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, Mondo was the millennial dream. I mean, it was for the cool part about Mondo was that it came out of just a pure passion and love for film, for cinema. And Alamo Drafthouse, for people that, I don't even know if we have an Alamo Drafthouse in Michigan anymore. I know that there were a couple trying to be popped up, but, it was like your local art theater that would show old movies from the 70s and 80s that you'd get to go just experience what it would be like to imagine seeing Terminator on the big screen in 1981, and Alamo Drafthouse was kind of dedicated to that experience of these incredible films that really defined a lot of genres. And then Mondo was they were making posters to basically say like fall in love with this film and collect it. And so I think from there, like you're saying, it goes into now all of a sudden we're moving away from the floating heads, the kind of studio, I don't know, what would you call it?
Just like photoshopped posters, really. Like
yeah, or what we consider the obligation posters, where if Tom Cruise is like, look, according to my agent, my face has to take up 80% of this poster so that people know I'm in every Mission Impossible. Mondo was kind of a rejection of that and put the art first over the obligation, because it was
like theme and story over starring cast.
100%, right? And so at this, and when we go through some of these, some of this, I mean, I truly, and I agree with you, Brandon, I think some of these are, you can't actually think of Star Wars as a visual without seeing some of these posters, at least for me, genre defining at this point, and especially for what they did. Moving on, we'll talk about how some of the artists now who started with Mondo, started with Alamo Drafthouse, and that group now are officially working for Star Wars, for Lucasfilm, which I think is, again, this full circle moment for so many fans of Star Wars that are like, look at this, right? So I'm super excited to walk through this. But Adam, the question I want to have for you, because you're going to recognize a lot of this stuff, but do you think there's something like adjacent to the gig poster? You're a musician, you play in a band. Were you a gig poster guy ever, or
I was more like a record store poster collector and cut up a magazine, put it on my wall kind of kid, and the big thing for me was, and I did this with some Star Wars and Star Trek stuff back in the day as well. I'd go to like this comics/magazine shop right down the street, like one of the few walking distance things from my house, and get issues of Hit Parader and what's the other UK metal magazine, Kerrang.
Oh yeah, sure.
I didn't know what those were, so I would go get those, and I'd find Metallica, White Zombie, Pantera, and early days of like new metal stuff as well, Deftones and Korn and whatever. And I'd cut out the full page things, the centerfold things, and then all the little ones, and I'd wallpaper my walls with those.
Yeah.
And then I'd get the 12 by 12 album covers from the record store from our friend, and I would put those up. So I never, if I got a poster from a show, I would be, quote, stealing it from the wall. I was a teenager. I was like scared. I would take it, but that's still just an ad mat. It's not like a true like gig poster in, there'd be some to be on like colored construction paper kind of thing.
Right.
But I didn't really discover this kind of thing until I guess like the Ninja Turtles, actually.
Sure.
Because, I found like one of the original graphic novels back in the day. I was a big fan as a kid. And finding those posters that were clearly like a piece of art in the world meant to convey, again, story and theme and vibe more than like, in the case of a movie poster, the star of the movie.
Sure.
So I got there, but it was more, honestly, I didn't fully make the connection of what you're saying, gig poster, until it didn't like fully sink in until like a few years ago when you were making Mosh Isley posters. And I'm like, oh, this is just like a band poster, the kind of thing that I never collected. And then I became very aware of all the other stuff, through this podcast as well.
Right.
Ryan and Nick got me this foil print Mandalorian poster over here.
Yeah, the Fraser Gillespie one. Brandon, if you know that. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So for me, a movie poster, classically, my whole life was kind of the Drew Struzan style.
Yeah.
That was why I proceeded. So I, in a band, wanted band posters in that style, and we actually did one for one music video years ago. So it's a weird roundabout way to get to this conversation as a dude in a band.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And Brandon, from your standpoint too, because you're obviously, you're connected with artists, you have your, from the, not only the Rat Fink, but then going all the way back into, people like Chuck Sperry.
Yeah.
And you've got, you have so many of, when people think of band posters, right? When you're looking at people who, if, you can almost tell a pus head graphic, when Metallica was making them, or you could, the artists just had their style. From your perspective, what was it like to see some of those artists that were working in gig posters, heavily illustration? A lot of times there is no visual association other than sometimes a band name or a band logo.
Right.
But other than that, then it's like, do they have a mascot? Do they have a logo? How do we tie that in? To see them come over to the movie poster side, what was
that's a great call out, that a lot of gig posters are a little bit more abstract, right? They're a little bit more like vibey rather than here are the people in the band, and then you have like Grateful Dead or something where it's like, okay, here's a little bit more with some mascots. But then the complication is, once you make the jump from gig poster to movie poster, you do have to conform a tiny bit. You have to conform a tiny bit to the scale that a movie poster requires.
Right.
And oftentimes they slot in really easily because it's just like a tiny bit of constraint.
Right.
And that's a really interesting call out, actually, because then I think some of the best work from these, like, not even former gig poster artists, because then they go back and forth. I always think of like Daniel Danger does a lot back and forth of a really great both pop culture art, but then pretty much the same exact style going into his gig posters for things like Nine Inch Nails. But then you have people like Tyler Stout, who we'll talk about in a second, who then kind of go back and forth between, some of their posters are very movie inspired, even if it's a gig poster, and then some of their movie posters are very abstract. And it's just a fun balance to see what an artist brings to a thing that you're very familiar with.
Right. And if you could, I'm just curious in this process, because you're working with some brilliant illustrators, and who I think, between Rob and some of the other Justin and all these other guys at Mondo at the time, how much of that was creative direction, and how much of it was the artist going, hey, I've got this idea, and how many cooks are in the kitchen of figuring out how to take a property and go, that's the poster?
That's a great question, because it is, you mentioned Rob Jones, who is also a gig poster artist, but also maybe like the most creative person I've ever met. And then also there were Eric Garza,
yes,
and Mitch Putnam
right.
were all the poster creative directors specifically at Mondo at the time I was working there. And all three of them have their own specialties and their own artists that they like. And it's the meshing of those three that really kind of like added a secret sauce, because it partially is anyone can come with an illustration, be like, hey, I'd like to make this a poster. But it was their eye that was, hey, here's the little tweaks we can make, or here's the things that aren't working, that really kind of pushed it to the next level without necessarily being overbearing. And I would kind of pick their brains of just like, how did you get to this point? Like, let's see these sketches before, because it is really a collaborative process. And what you got by the end of the Mondo reign of those guys especially was a very concise way of communicating with artists, where it was a really impressive feat to get the message across. Because then at the same time, you are working within a studio constraint at the point in Mondo's lifespan, even now,
right? Yeah.
Where it is all licensed now. There are galleries like Gallery Nucleus or 1988, all these, and they're really great, Hero Complex, that sometimes don't do licensed art. And so you do get a little bit more freedom.
Right.
But then when there is the license aspect, like you did have to have a steady hand. So they were really focused on that and cultivating those artist relationships, but really kind of set the standard for the entire industry, I think.
Right. And then was there, from that perspective, were there certain ideas that came up that said this would be sick, or are you kind of looking at the artist and going, we know that Ken Taylor's going to do hypervector work and super detailed stuff, and then we know that Matt Taylor's got a kind of grungy, a little spaced out, did you see a lot of like concept focused after the artist was picked, or did you kind of play to the artist's strong hand?
Yeah, if you notice, again, they did a great job at identifying artists that were really, really great at certain things. Matt Taylor's a great example where they really utilized him a lot for the Marvel prints, going like right before Endgame to a little bit further, and it kind of set a style in a very specific way. And I think that it's more identifying, like one artist that I love is Francesco Francavilla, right?
Yes.
Who is really great
absolutely
at churning out just beautiful, detailed, very atmospheric horror and sci-fi art, specifically
illustrations.
And so especially if you knew that something was coming, for instance, Werewolf by Night was kind of a surprise, right? And so those guys were able to pretty quickly identify, oh, we can get him to make this art that really fits the theme of this what is it called, a Marvel special presentation, right?
Right.
In a way that fits very, very well. Both in that case, I think it was both used for a poster and a vinyl, and it was kind of like, how do you really make sure that you're picking the right people? And again, those three guys, and then the music creative directors, right, Mo Shafiq and Spencer Hickman, were like just geniuses at also pulling artists that could create a whole piece of art for a record that could potentially be used for a poster as well. So it was very collaborative across the board.
Yeah, and I love that. And then as Mondo was kind of getting into, as you said, the music, we saw more of these artists, Paul Mann, that we'll get into. Now he's doing the kind of the dust jacket and doing all that for Star Wars. So it's really, I think at this point it was like Lucasfilm kind of had now suddenly like their pick at all of these incredible artists that had probably had relationships with you guys to say, now we know that these guys aren't, this isn't fan art. These are professional artists who are, able to take criticism, able to take, feedback, and be able to say, how do we make this work? So I can just imagine that was just an amazing thing for everybody when we saw that project come together. So this is awesome, man. I'm geeked because we're about to blow Adam's mind, first of all.
Okay.
And Adam, in terms of like when you think of a Star Wars poster, you said Drew Struzan, but like when you think of Star Wars, like what is the first poster that you think of when it comes to your mind?
I mean, the original classic A New Hope poster.
Which one?
Well, I think of it more as the cover of the VHS. The more
Man on a mountain,
the classic, hero on a mountain kind of thing. Yeah, it's like the abs showing, damsel with the flowing stuff. It's just like it might as well be a romance novel cover.
Of course.
So it's a little absurd that's my go-to, but I mean, since the prequels, the Phantom Menace teaser poster is like the most iconic ever to me.
Right.
Even though that's on the other end of the spectrum from something like a Struzen poster.
Sure.
So,
sure.
I don't know. I don't really have a straightforward answer, I guess.
Sure. And I think, yeah, I mean, well, Brandon, what's yours? I mean, the hard part is like now looking back, now that you've seen everything. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because we'll talk about some of the term here is alternative movie poster, AMP. It's thrown around a lot in the space. But I think if we're talking about like a theatrical poster for me and Star Wars, I love your choice of the Phantom Menace teaser. I would go with Return of the Jedi teaser, the two hands with the lightsaber.
Oh yeah, sure.
I always just was so drawn to that, especially growing up. And then here's a fun fact: is the hands on that lightsaber. I believe that artist is Tim Reamer. Is that his name? Okay. But the reference photo for that is George Lucas's hands are holding the lightsaber, which is very cool. And someone finally found the actual photo, which is like a pretty intense, like some of
a deep dive. Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, cool. So that's so is kind of my go-to if I think about Star Wars. As a poster.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think it's very important because at some point, especially for when we mentioned the Phantom Menace, because we don't have that in our presentation, but like certainly, I think that was when people think of a teaser poster. Alien had done it. Aliens, just the glowing green egg and in space, no one can hear you scream. This wasn't this wasn't new to cinema, but like certainly that is where everything worked. You have Anakin Skywalker, the shadow is Darth Vader. I mean, that is, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest teaser posters of all time. Enough to know what happens for people who know, enough to get your excitement going. And it was a movie that was like, you're not going to see Darth Vader for 2 more movies. But we're letting you know that like when you come in here, like it's going to kick off another, 6 hours of movies. So let's get into it. Let's do this. Star Wars, the art of the poster, this presentation we have here. Brandon's here. Stoked about this. So this is kind of, so when we came up with this idea to talk about this, Brandon is my guy in regards to posters. And basically what we did is I said, why don't you pick 5? I'll pick 5 of what we think are probably some of the greatest alternative movie posters for Star Wars that are not official key art. And Brandon picked 5. I think you got a couple honorable mentions in there.
I think I did. It was hard to choose.
Dude, that's the hardest part, right? I'm sitting here being like, oh, damn, that's a good one too. Damn. So I've got a couple on there too, but really I think this is an awesome thing to go through. So Adam, click us through here. Let's go into this first one. And I think for people watching at home, you have to start off with obviously the icons, right? So Adam, this is the poster that you think of when you think of Star Wars.
Yes. It's weird though, because I think of the image centered on a VHS than I do this
the poster.
This more like old school layout that has, I mean, it looks like an ad mat for a concert where you've got the image at the top and at the bottom. Someone would handwrite the venue and the date,
right? But
it's got credits in this case, and I don't know if that was like an industry, like was this in some kind of like union contract that this is how you had to do posters at some point? Do you guys know anything about this format?
The credit block? No. Yeah. But it is interesting you bring it up, because one thing that we'll talk about as we go through this is there's a lot of posters recently, licensing specific wise, especially Disney and Star Wars and Marvel, they don't allow credit blocks anymore for a lot of posters, because they don't want it confused with official key art. It's a very fine line that they run, and a lot of fans, me included, really do like when there's a credit block on an alternative movie poster, just because it makes it feel like, oh, this could have been official in a theater, this could have been something. But it is an interesting distinction that's happening, because this is so keyed into our brains at the moment of just like, that's what a poster looks like, that's what it always is when you go look at a marquee. And there's probably a moment in time where this had to happen, right? Because if you think about very old posters from like the 30s or 40s, like a Hitchcock poster didn't necessarily have every single person listed, as far as I can remember. So there had to have been a union shift at some point to make sure that everyone was on there.
Right.
And that was, and then again too, going back to that point, I mean, we know that George Lucas was fined by the studio for putting the credits at the end of the movie. That was a big thing.
Or fined by the unions, right?
Yeah, by the Directors Guild, I believe. Because well, it was especially because of Empire, right? Because it was Irvin Kershner. It wasn't him,
right?
But it would have been all of them, right? Like the Screen Actors Guild, like everyone who needed to have credits in a certain way. It would have been multiple fines, wouldn't you think?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I guess the only one reported is directors, because I guess normally it's like an Alfred Hitchcock production,
Brian De Palma
right?
film.
Yeah,
sure.
So I wonder, maybe he had more fines than we know about.
I think it worked out.
He survived. He
survived. Yeah, and it made a small little film, little franchise. Good for him. But when we talk about posters, we have to, of course, mention this. And I kind of wanted to throw in the three different eras of what I would think would be defining Star Wars, right? So you've got, is it Tom Jung? How do you pronounce his last name?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. Well, you've got a couple different artists. Drew Struzan gets brought on to do, I think his first poster was actually Revenge of the Jedi. Is that accurate?
Well, his first poster was actually the Star Wars circus style poster. Which is the one that's like the fake rips.
Yes.
But he only did part of it.
Right.
And then another artist did part of it as well. But that was his first official Star Wars poster, which is also, I think, underrated in terms of like how unique that is, and kind of an alternative movie poster in itself, right? With that concept of it being kind of a circus that had left town, and here was what was left.
Yeah.
But that was his first, and then you're right. Then Revenge of the Sith teaser, I believe it's his next one.
Right. So, and then from there, he kind of becomes the Drew that we know him. He's teamed up with every Spielberg production, everything from there. And what I think when people think of a movie poster that has that look to it, right? And so much that Tom DeLonge like loses his mind over it when he makes Angels and Airwaves. We've seen this style replicated a couple times, but for people who are like, what is that? Drew Struzan is the guy, right? So special edition versions, and ends up doing all the prequel trilogy, kind of defines the era of what we would consider to be the floating heads, the story within this, the story within the poster. I mean, this is Drew Struzan.
Goonies is another iconic one that most people can bring to mind. Right. Any of the Indiana Jones stuff, it looks like, to me, it looks like colored pencil is what it's drawn with.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was painted or what, but
there's a lot of airbrushing too. But he starts. It is his base layer is that pencil,
colored pencil. So there's a great documentary called Drew. Highly recommend if you appreciate his work. He's a kind of an old curmudgeon at this point, and I love him for it. But it's his body of work speaks for himself. And then to kind of modernize things, Paul Shipper is the artist. He's an illustrator, I believe, in the UK, and he has been responsible for a lot of Star Wars over the last couple of years. I think I would say probably The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker started to break out of the floating heads a little bit. I think for a lot of people, when they remember The Rise of Skywalker, you had Rey kind of standing there in this similar Luke Skywalker pose from 1977 that had the split with the two faces on it. That was all Paul. But when you look at Paul's work up close, he does the same, colored pencil kind of a look. So in terms of kind of emulating that style, Paul Shipper, someone who wasn't in the presentation, Mark Ratz also is another person who just, incredible illustrator, but kind of what I would consider the old school way of doing things, which as a, digital artist myself, in times of not being able to have time to sit here and draw something, it's pretty amazing at how many fantastic artists surround this franchise. But of course.
Hey, while we're on the Drew Struzan theme, though, and this kind of hand-drawn thing, I want to shout out my buddy Blake Armstrong, who works at BLT Communications, and Struzan's like his number one inspiration. He did the Story of the Year poster for the music video that we did kind of like a horror thing.
Yeah,
he's great. He's incredible, and it's all digital, but it's this style, and I don't know. I feel like at this point, it's kind of is back to stay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe people are getting burned out on it, but
he's another one that's really he's carrying the torch for sure, and that's being used. Like I think he did Fallen Fall Guy and maybe a couple Marvel things recently too. It's being used, which is great. I love seeing it like when I go to a theater and it's like not just a Photoshop, movie still.
Right, and there's another artist coming, but like Rory Kurtz with Baby Driver.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, like so good. So anyway, so I kind of want to preface this for people who are watching to go, we're not going to leave out these iconic artists to say when we think about Star Wars posters. But click to the next slide, Adam. So, Brandon, you and I kind of both agreed we got to take. There's 2 posters that we had to take out because these are the first ones that people think of. And this was the 2010 era. Do you have any interesting information about these in particular?
Just that I think these were the first Mondo posters I ever saw. And I was like, cool. Like, this is what I am obsessed with now. And so, like I was saying, this is from that first licensed Star Wars show. And same with the next ones we'll talk about. And same with a couple other ones. Like, it was just like a really stacked, really incredible show, both with specific movie posters, but also like art prints from Star Wars characters. But this is Tyler Stout. This is his style. It's very photorealistic, but like pencil. I don't even know how he makes it. I think it's all in Photoshop or Illustrator now.
Right.
But these are his Star Wars posters. And so the colored ones are the regular versions, and then the metallic gold, which really are beautiful in person, are the variants. And it was really low run. These were my white whales for a while. Sure. I got them during the pandemic, though. I finally bit the bullet, dropped $1,000 on a slightly damaged set, and they're hanging downstairs.
What do you call this style?
I don't even know. What would you say?
I mean, for me,
or what's the influence at least?
Well, what's really cool about this is when you look at them from a composition standpoint, it's actually all single line weight, which is amazing because how he handles shading is if you were to look at my face right now, he would just draw a line and then make this a light color, and then he would do this a slightly desaturated color on the other side. So you can see kind of on Luke's face in Empire, you can see that there is shading to it, but all he's doing is just taking a little bit of a desaturated color and drops it in there. Now, the beauty about Mondo is that these were all screen printed. So they're working with some of the best printers in the country, and they're doing this I think this was 8 color print, 6 color print. And it truly, because I have these as well, and you see them in person and you can't help but just know that this is individual layers of ink. This is unbelievably cool. But I would say this is I would call it single line weight illustration personally, just because I know it from that technical standpoint of how this was achieved. But I don't know. I don't want to simplify it as being vector art because.
But there's also something about the density of the content. It gives me a little bit Japanese vibes, but it's something else. Yeah. It seems like it's pulling influences from a bunch of disparate kind of things.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming, it is in an incredible way. And I highly recommend people watching or listening to look up Tyler Stout, and he's done this style for pretty much every one of your favorite movies. And it's so cool to see them realized in this way. And I have a ton, because the dream when you see these, I think especially you're like, oh, I would line a media room with framed posters of this style, of this same exact, but for RoboCop and Inglourious Bastards, and you just have it for every single movie that you love from the same guy. And I think that was the what drew people to him. He had a very distinct style that he kind of repeated, but you knew that it took so much effort to do so.
Right. And he's as a person, he's a very kind of off the grid guy. I believe he lives in Oregon. He kind of has he homesteads. He's got he's just a guy working on his computer. Yeah. And so when he drops a poster, it's a huge deal.
Yeah. He does one a year now, maybe.
Which is incredible, right?
You're okay, let's do it. I think the last one was Halloween. Was that what he did? And he did True Romance recently. It was, again, it's just it's an event.
Yeah,
he drops one
Mad Max.
Mad Max Fury Road.
From the canceled one from 2020. Yeah. So, so there's there's certainly something about, like, for Tyler Stout, again, the density is a great word, because you're packing the entire story of this movie into this one poster. And, we'll talk a little bit about the difference of that, but these certainly were, when people think of Mondo, then this one and the next poster are definitive, right? This is, Mondo's greatest work in this regard, of having someone like this be able to make these posters. And if you're looking at getting these posters, there's a couple things for collectors. They want the same. These are 24 by 36, screen printed, French paper, beautiful. It's got a tooth to it. He hand signs them all. And everyone wants to get matching sets. So if you get a matching set, there you go. You've got, the same number on all three posters. This set right now was sold, I believe, for, Brandon, back me up on this, about $60 a piece, $75 a piece.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like $45 a poster.
45
bucks.
Yeah, $45
initially.
a poster.
Yeah.
And they were sold at was this sold at the show?
Yeah, it was a gallery show, which was in Austin on Guadalupe, just a nice little building in a on the side of a road.
Yeah.
And this was one of them.
So people line up to go into the show, and they come in, and you got all kinds of nerds with their blueprint tubes, and they are buying these posters, and they're rolling up and going, okay, cool, I got the poster. Now, the crazy part is that the ones that don't sell at the show go up online. Website was mondotees.com, and this was when my doctor says, where did your anxiety come from? It's this gallery right here, because they would drop at a random time throughout the day. You had no idea when these were going to drop, and all of a sudden they'd just be on the homepage. You had people who were coding, site watchers. You had people who were running bots. You had people who were sitting there refreshing. People started to figure out, like, if the site took longer to load, it meant the poster was coming, right? And so these posters went in. They drop in seconds. The time it takes to put your credit card in to buy them, it was insane. These posters as a set right now are going for about $3,000 to $4,000 as a set.
Jesus.
Yeah. So if you have some of them, which is like my holy grail, and I got a set that I traded for other Stout posters from Marvel. These are, I mean, gosh, this is it. But speaking of expensive posters, let's go to the next one. Brandon, walk us through
even
this.
more expensive posters. This is Ollie Moss.
Yeah.
This is Ollie Moss. I love the Stouts, obviously, and they are like a personal favorite, but I do think these are maybe the best Star Wars posters ever made.
I agree.
I would probably agree.
Yeah, it is. Ollie Moss is a genius, like truly a genius, and his work, kitschy. People have tried to copy this style, and you can find, if you type in Ollie Moss Star Wars, there will invariably be a prequel version and a sequel version of this too, of people trying to ape this style, right. And it's impossible. Like you're like, oh, this is just chintzy. Yeah. This is just, I think, gorgeous, perfect work, just in its simplicity. But when you see them in person, which I do not have these in person, this is, I think you were saying Stouts are about 3,000. I think these are about 5,000 now.
Jesus.
I would say if you can find a set for 5,000, that's pretty good, because there's a set on eBay right now, as I was looking, that's currently going for 13,000.
Yeah,
oh my God,
bro.
I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah,
but dude. So to describe these for listeners, almost everyone who's listening has probably seen these. If you searched for minimalist Star Wars posters or modern
double exposure,
something like that.
Yeah, double exposure is for people who, it's a photography term of where you would take a picture of something, and then the camera is basically, you're double exposing it. So if you have a person with a smaller image inside of it, that's what Ollie had kind of replicated here with this. But this is this, C-3PO's eyes are the twin suns. Boba Fett's T-visor is Cloud City. Vader's eyes are on Endor, where, Luke and him meet basically for the, the first time, not in combat.
The branches of the trees make
his eyes
create the mask.
Yeah.
But it's these basically these silhouettes with the environments inside the silhouettes, and the majority of the other half of the poster is like just an off-white. The logos all sit inside these silhouettes. It's
Yeah, and these are truly. I mean, you to your point, Brandon. Like you have seen these, in every time and Star Wars has made them official art at this point now too, which is really cool. It's been on official license products, and I've seen them in puzzles and notebooks and all kinds of stuff. So in the story for this one, do you have any background like how this one in particular came to be?
I don't, but I do have a sad story related to this, which is, and this is not a secret. This is not a secret, but when the Force Awakens came out, Mondo was like, we should get Ollie to do this for Force Awakens.
Oh boy.
And he did it. And it's a landscape.
Yes.
24x36 of Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. I've seen this. Yes.
But
yes.
But the crashed Star Destroyer on Jakku makes up his helmet.
Yes.
And you're like, when you see it, you're like, oh yes, of course. But going back to earlier with the credit block conversation, Disney didn't want credit block. Ollie wanted credit block. It ended there. And it was never published. And it's like, I'm mad. I'm truly pissed. Like,
sure.
Because these are pretty stellar. He actually was in Austin a little bit ago for a film festival, and every time I just like play it cool, and I'm like, I don't know who you are. Like, you definitely didn't do, because it's not, he didn't do just this. If he had done just this and stopped, that would be great. Sure. But all of his stuff is gorgeous. He actually has a really great Harry Potter set that I have in my wife's office.
Yes.
That he did, was it for the audiobooks or something? Again, it was official. But it's like he replicated the same scene 7 times with just slight differences to
it's a silhouette of Hogwarts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then there's like a forest in front of it. Yeah. It's again, he is a genius. And then he kind of retired from the poster game, and now just not just, but he art directs video games.
Yeah.
And so I'm always hopeful he comes back and does something, because he has some just incredible stuff, especially in the early days of the Draft House. He was really, really making just like some instant classics.
Yeah. And in a weird poster collecting way, I traded I somehow got one of his Jungle Book ones.
Nice.
It's done very much in the same style. Traded it for someone, and then from there, it ended up me getting the Star Wars posters from Stout. So nice. It's truly. I have Ollie to thank for that, so I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. So if you're able to somehow find these, I think our buddy Wasted Vet has one of them. Adam, he has the Return of Jedi version, I think. And I always tell him, I'm like, if you ever sell it, don't. But if you ever sell it to me. And I will pay you back over in small lump sum, maybe over the course of 10 years. But this is iconic, I think, for people when they think of alternative movie poster. It's in the conversation every single time. So this is fantastic. So Brandon, let's get into yours, man.
Okay, let's do it.
I want to see your picks, dude. Let's get into it.
I was trying to spread them out a little bit between Mondo and private commissions we'll talk about, and then other galleries. This is Bottleneck Gallery. They put out some really great stuff. I have a bunch of their stuff. This is Matt Ferguson, who now has done a ton of Star Wars.
Yeah.
He's the one that did all the re-release posters for Empire and Jedi and Phantom Menace. So like he has really kind of gone into the super mainstream for what it means to be Star Wars. And I love his posters there. I just really do love the simplicity of these specifically. These I picked up pretty immediately. He also did similar versions of this for Indiana Jones and for Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And it goes back to the idea of, if I ever had a media room, I would love to just have a wall of all of my favorite things done in a similar-ish style. But I just love both the Millennium Falcon entering. I love Luke and Vader leaving, and Vader in the middle. It really is just kind of a powerful, simple, and it is similar to the Ollie Moss ones. I also am a sucker for whenever they use the original logos on things. So all that combined, and the colors, just really, really stellar stuff. And also a unique size.
True. 12 by 36.
Yes. And so a fun size, right? Because a lot of Mondo puts out, and all the other galleries put a lot 24 by 36.
They're huge, dude. They're huge.
And so it's nice to have something a tiny bit smaller and a tiny bit more portable, and something slightly different.
Right. And 24 by 36 is an awesome size, and it sucks when you need to frame it, because you have to custom frame everything, and it is a massive, I think at this point, each frame that I've put my 24 by 36s, it's a $400 frame every time, right?
So you just gotta. I have one. I'm looking at what I have hanging. I have a Struzen. So what's funny about Struzen is he did some Mondo work.
Yes, right.
That became screen prints, and so I have the thing, untitled.
Okay, yeah,
up here, but that was custom framed. But then oftentimes I just go to Michael's and I just get the 24 by 36, or I use Spotlight frames, which is a little bit cheaper.
Yep.
Because I could not afford it anymore.
Sure, I know it's ridiculous, but I agree with you. So, and quickly, you know, we don't now. This is kind of like, from your standpoint, are you kind of looking at this and imagining what a credit block would look like under these now that we kind of have this little stipulation?
It's a great question. I think this works without it. I think there are some that work without it. I do think oftentimes when we'll go through a little bit more, when it's more art print rather than poster, I'm all for it just being a piece of art rather than a advertisement for a movie coming out.
Sure.
And I think this serves it in a pretty good way of keeping it relatively simple. I don't know if you can really see, but it does have the taglines at the bottom as well. Which I really do love. A long time ago in Galaxy Far, Far Away, Star Wars Saga Continues, and Return to a Galaxy Far, Far Away, which I really do love. So at least they added that. But yeah,
I dig that. And then from your standpoint too, is there? Well, first of all, Adam, we have the Space Troopers in a New Hope, right? Which is the only time we actually see stormtroopers outside of a space station in space, actually.
Joe Johnson is right there.
This is Joe Johnson standing in this outfit, and then this pack. The only time we never saw them again, that pack was stolen from set, and no one knows where it is still.
Whoa.
Yeah, but there are only 2 of them, and it was too much of a pain. I believe his story is this too much of a pain in the ass to bring back, and so they were like, I guess they're just gone. So that's the only time you see the Space Trooper, Stormtrooper version ever in original Star Wars.
That's dope. That's so dope.
Is classic. So let's go to the next one, because this one's
whoa, this is wild.
Yeah, this is Scott C, who does watercolor, and it's very cartoony. He was a Disney artist. He worked on, I think, Cosmonauts video game. Like, so you can kind of see that style. And he really he does a thing called epic showdowns, which normally are just like 1 or 2 people staring at each other in a 4x4 watercolor frame. And then this is kind of maybe the most intense work he's ever done, where he told the entire story of Star Wars in one piece. And I think he crushed it. And it's beautiful. And again, talking about screen printing and talking about the intensive process, when you see this in person, it really is kind of mind-blowing, because it replicates that watercolor style in a really, really unique way. And again, I don't think he ever did this for 5 and 6, and I really wish he would.
Right.
But this is one that I'm very, very happy to have, and I will have to frame it eventually.
Yeah.
It's kind of giving like Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Or what are those other, what's that style of children's book?
Right, like a not a magic eye, but
kind of
eyewitness. What is it? But yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. What can you find? And you can always find something new.
Yeah, and you'll see sometimes like what's different between these 2 images kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Kevin and on our YouTube comment was like, "I'm squinting now. Where the hell is Waldo?" Which would be amazing if Scott actually came here. But and our friends Peter, Peter Soretta and Kitra. Peter has an extensive collection of Scott.
Yeah,
C's.
Him and Jermaine Lucier both have so many originals of this guy's, and I am very jealous. I got my first original. If you give me a second, I can go grab. I got my first original of his. It's kind of Star Wars related. I'll show you.
Grab it. Come on, man. We got time. I love a long episode, Adam. This is what I'm talking about, man. This is just conversation, people chatting.
So apologies, it is not Star Wars, but it is Hardware Wars. And
oh, nice.
And so this is an actual watercolor of his.
That's awesome.
But he just did a gallery show earlier this year, and so I picked that up.
I love that.
A little too expensive for how big that is, but I had to get it.
Gotta support the arts.
I gotta do it.
And this is really a brilliant piece in many ways, because like this is one of those things where, what do you think of, Brandon, when you think of the delineation between art print, poster, right? Like what, from your standpoint.
It really it gets blurred, and it has gotten blurred, right? This is obviously a print for the movie Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, right? Like it's very much indicative of a specific movie in a specific time and place.
Right.
I do think I guess if I can see it being hung in a movie theater to promote a screening of the movie, then it leans a little bit more movie poster for me. But I do think I kind of just buy what my eye likes. It's not necessarily I only buy movie posters, I only buy art prints, I only buy whatever it might be. And This is a good example of kind of a blending of the two.
Yeah, I love that. And it's got everything from, the trench run all the way to, you have the ceremony on Yavin. You've got the showdown between Vader and Obi-Wan. You've got the executioner Punisher droid. What's the interrogator droid? You've got Mos. I can't say Mos.
Not even no.
Mos.
Yeah, Mos Eisley. I mean, it's got everything. Even the droid that the one that looks like it's on a vacuum with all the different arms. I love that. And then you've got R7. You have so many droids in here. This is truly an amazing piece. So I think it's a great pick, man. I like this one. Let's go to the next one. Here we go.
Oh yeah, here we go.
These are insane. And this is something, these were only print runs of maybe 50, if that, maybe less. I think the ones that I love are these, the foil variants, and that's even less. And this popped up one day. I'm in these Facebook groups for, movie posters, and these popped up as a private commission, and I've never been more pissed. I've never been more upset that I was not in this commission, because I will never get these, but just the work and the iconography and the just whatever's happening in all of these is really just gorgeous. And again, it kind of reminds me of the first times I ever saw the stouts and the Ollie Mosses. I was like, I've never seen something like this before.
Sure.
And really, really beautiful work.
Yeah. So this was done by a Japanese artist named Zero. And one of the artists that kind of just, we have someone that kind of pops onto the scene and people lose their mind over it. He had done a Kill Bill poster that was just gorgeous. And his work is heavy detail pencil work. It's really incredible. And so I was in this commission group, and we decided, we're like, do we want to do all three up at once, right? And so when you have these commission groups, what happens is, for people who are kind of curious as to like how this stuff happens, you get a group of people together that say, hey, it's not going to be for sale outside of what everyone agrees to, and everyone pools their money, you pay the artist, and you just get it done. It's not for sale outside. It's just between you and the people who just literally want to see it get done. So the commissioner, a friend of ours, really had a vision for him, and seeing some of the process of how they came to be like this was, it kept getting better. I've been in some commission groups where I think you start to lose it a little bit. You start jumping the shark with a lot of people having opinions, right? And this was one of the series that I looked at it, and I said, between the regular version of the English, and then you get this beautiful Japanese foil, the gold print on there. The printing was incredible. And the story, again, if you look in kind of the corners of each of the posters, you've got Grievous, you've got Commander Cody, you've got Django, you've got the Phase 1 clones, you've got 3PO R2, and then you've got Newt Gunray, and you have the Famba from Naboo, Jar Jar, and all of these characters. Anakin is holding his pod racers and his N1s like they're toys, because his innocence is the thing that gets lost in the Phantom Menace. So the story being pushed and driven through here truly was the focus of these posters. And I think they will go, I think they will probably end up as some of probably the definitive prequel posters of how
for sure
Star Wars might move forward with as we look at other stories. But yeah, truly, they look amazing in person. The rest of them are en route, I believe, over the next couple weeks. So I will make sure not to make you too jealous, Brandon. But
yeah, I was about to say, holy shit, yeah.
We'll see. So I've got, and I sent these to these guys like last year, and I was like, oh hey, look what came in the mail, and all of them were like, holy shit. So yeah, these are amazing. So yeah,
sure.
there we go. Next one here. Yeah, I love this one. This is great.
Yeah, again, talking about just distinct style. This is from the same gallery show. Imagine if you went into the gallery and you could pick up those Star Wars stouts, you could pick up the Star Wars Ali Mas, and you could pick this up all at the same time. This is all the same show, just coming out with a bang. This is Florian Bertmer, who I really like, really nice guy, and his attention to detail is just so incredible. And I'm also a huge sucker for the Cantina aliens and Jabba's Palace aliens specifically, and this really really brings them to the forefront, and just kind of gives them a hero moment for a second. I don't have this one just yet. I'm trying to get it for a buddy first before I'm going to get it for myself. But eventually, I do want this as a focal piece because it is gorgeous.
Yeah, one of our patrons is like, this looks like a gig poster, and I absolutely agree with that. I think when I look at this, and also shout out to Talking Bay 94, your conversation with Tom from of Regal Robot, fantastic conversation about bringing these characters back to life. A lot of Rick Baker movie monster characters in here. The Cantina scene truly was a launching point for a lot of people. So to have Tom Spina talk about that, I loved that conversation that you had with him.
He's great. He's a like-minded guy. He's bringing a lot of these aliens to my home, which is great. Much to the my wife is not happy with that, but I have so many new little alien friends because of Tom. So
yeah, absolutely. And between him and Phil Tippett, you're like sitting here being like, the Star Wars is definitive language. It really is. It's these, you've got the Tonica sisters here, of course, for people who are buying the vintage collection. That's literally the Cantina, Mos Eisley, Docking Bay 94. That's literally what's being made. That was the latest HasLab with all of these characters in it. So I think there's definitely Mos Eisley is having a moment.
And the Lego set again, things I have not bought yet, but maybe one day.
Right. Well, we're approaching 50 years of Star Wars, and I think this is where people look back and go, this not only everyone knew that Star Wars was next level, but this is truly what we're talking about. So this is a great pick. I love this one. What do you got next for us?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Oh, these are the Jocks. These are the Jock variants specifically, which are done in kind of a lobby card style. So Jock is an incredible comic book artist. He's maybe one of the most definitive Batman artists of all time.
Right.
A big Judge Dredd artist as well. Also a very, very nice guy who I was able to interview because not only did he do these posters, but he also was a concept artist for The Last Jedi. Yes. So he designed a lot of the costumes for The Last Jedi, including Crate Luke, including the Leia costume with the collar.
Oh yeah,
the Rey costume for that movie, like with her poncho and everything. Just a bunch of like really great. I mean, if he had just done Crate Luke, it'd be like, okay, great, you crushed it.
Yeah.
But these I just love as kind of like the journey of Luke Skywalker.
Sure.
In places that we don't necessarily see highlighted very often in posters or in art. But all three, I think, are really fun and interesting, even with kind of the journey of him like using his weapon in certain ways. But also when you zoom in, it's a very loose style. Even if you compare it to the Tyler Stout that we looked at the very beginning, it's very loose. When you zoom in more and more, you're like, oh, there's really not that much holding it all up together.
Right.
But the way that it works, the regular versions are 24 by 36 in a vertical way.
Right.
And it really, they also are beautiful. But I just, for some reason, the lobby card vintage look really works for me here. And I think it's just gorgeous stuff.
Yeah. What do you mean by lobby card for listeners?
Yeah. So before I was born, the movies would promote themselves not only with movie posters, but with like 8x10 black and white lobby cards that would be disseminated both for press stills, but also you could buy it in the lobby of movie theaters as like a memento. And so this is
like
kind
a
of
promo glossy is what in the 90s I heard it referred to as.
Yeah. And oftentimes it would have the logo or who the actor was or whatever it was. And so with like the white borders, it's very much reminiscent of that style. but also I think looks great, kind of blown up in this sense. Yeah. And really, really, really great.
And
you still see this.
Go ahead, Ab.
Sorry, you still see this at signings, autograph, sessions at cons. Yep. If somebody keeps a stack of something official that has like similar to their headshot, like a character shot, and it has their name, it's got a logo, whatever. So if you don't bring something up to get signed, they'll offer that.
And I oftentimes prefer that too, especially because I have right below me, I collect press kits from the 70s and 80s that come with not only like the glossy photos, but then like typewritten descriptions of who these people are, and they're all kind of stapled so that people could use it for newspaper articles and clippings and stuff. And again, it's just kind of a really cool time capsule, and of course these movies were part of that, so it works in that sense too.
Dope. Jock's style too. Most recently, the John Wick. I think the John Wick re-release of a steelbook, and Jock did the work for that. But I mean, Adam, were you ever follow like modernish comics at all, like Batman, the Black Mirror, or anything like that?
No, I'm only like adjacently familiar with certain things just from going and looking for Star Wars books in Barnes and Noble, you know what I mean?
And if I showed you some of Jock's Batman stuff, you would be like, "Oh, I've seen that before." Like it's just like Ollie Moss in the Star Wars. Like people who are in the nerd sphere have seen this work. But to Brandon, to your point, like if you look at his stuff, it's like you can see literally what size Sharpie he used. I mean, it's incredible. It's awesome. At his layering of, he does like these kind of, these dithering effects of, half toning, and then he throws all this paint on him. He has an art book that I think for anybody who likes process, Jock's book is one of the coolest things because he does cutaways of how he handles color blocking, and then he puts black ink on top of it. His work in the comic book Witches that he wrote with Scott Snyder is unbelievable. So if you're looking at Jock, look at his work. You've seen it around, but I agree with you. I think these were some killer posters that eventually I'd love to pick up too. And I remember when these dropped on the site, I was like, I probably should have. So, I'm just kind of looking at this whole presentation as a giant sucker punch for my wallet. What do we got next, Adam?
We have this.
Honorable mention.
Here we go. Oh, Brandon, walk me through these.
Okay. First is these Ken Taylors, which is from the same 2010 show. Again, just talking about, and these are, I don't know the size of these, but these are 6 individual prints that you could buy individually, but obviously you want all 6 of the bounty hunters. And I just think they're so cool. Ken Taylor, again, a gig poster guy,
right?
Does a lot of work with like Metallica and those kind of bands. Yeah. And so you can kind of see that style replicated here. And I just think they're so cool and so badass. Like, yeah. I love these guys, and seeing them displayed this way and seeing them all next to each other. Really, really great. I don't have these, kind of a white whale, but what I do have are these Mike Mitchell portraits.
Here we go.
He's been releasing these for probably a decade now. I think the series has pretty much stopped. But really, these are, the size is like a 12 by 16.
Yeah.
So
yeah. They're just a real nice little,
a real good size. I have them all in a portfolio, besides a couple that I have framed. I used to have all of them framed when I was not married. But it really just beautiful. He does these on a computer, but they're hand drawn in a sense. So when you zoom in, you can kind of see the painterly brush that he is using with an Illustrator. These, and you'd be really surprised, even with how he does like his eyes and stuff like that, where it becomes almost cartoony, where when you're seeing it like this, you're seeing it very photorealistic. And then when you zoom out, you really kind of start seeing more and more detail.
Yeah.
But just gorgeous. I love the colors, and I love the different people that he's chosen to spotlight. I also love, for instance, you can't really tell here, but the Chewbacca, for instance, is a bigger size paper.
Yeah.
The Wicket is a smaller size paper. And so you kind of put them all together, and it is kind of a very fun thing. And I did call these are called bastards. These, he hand tears his portraits and then matches them together. So this is just one example, that Luke and AT-AT pilot, but everything else, he probably did 20 of them. And I talked about things I should have bought when I was at the gallery show. I should have bought one of them, because they are like an additional work of art, very, very tactile, and just really fun. There are some that are really, really fun combinations. I think there's like a Tarkin and like maybe it was like Nien Nunb or something. It was things that you would never expect.
Right.
But I really love that style, and he did it also for Marvel, and then he also did it for like some Tarantino movies and Mad Max and things like that. And I really like his style and what he did specifically for Star Wars.
Yeah, he's got a really brilliant way of like you said, combining that cartoony approach to it, and a lot of his like personal work, like the the foods and the fat birds. You can see his humor through his art, which I love when an artist's personality shine through that. And these in particular, I remember him saying, "Well, I'm starting to like run out of people." And I, as someone who has, my first costume in the 501st was a biker scout. I'm like, retire after you do the biker scout. That's fine. I go, but you got the TKs, you got the sand troopers, you got the snow troopers. I'm like, just be done after the biker scout. Just give me a biker scout. But this was kind of for people who are looking at the collectability of these. I specifically remember Emperor Palpatine, what I think was, correct me if I'm wrong, was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive or was a convention exclusive, right?
One of them was, I know for a fact, San Diego Comic-Con was Garandan, because I got trampled for a Garandan in the San Diego Comic-Con line. And I remember like staring at it after I truly almost died, buying this piece of art for a alien, and I was like, what am I doing? Who am I? But I think Emperor Palpatine might be, I think it's the lowest piece count for that, so and so that was always the biggest one to get. It was for a convention, you're right, but it might have been one of the Comic Cons,
or MondoCon. Might have been MondoCon.
Might have been a MondoCon.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, that collectability of going, and I think for people who know that the exclusives for these conventions are insane. Like your story of being trampled to get in line at a convention unfortunately happens at all of the big ones. I mean, people are insane about stuff like this. So the collectability of people buying art in a way is like actually endearing. You're like, either people are buying it to flip it, or people are buying it because they're like, I have to be a completionist. I've always said in Star Wars, you're going to have a bad time.
Right.
If you're a completionist, if your poison is hot toys, or if your poison, like us, Brandon, is incredibly thin, very easy to destroy paper. If you point to where your anxiety started, it's literally this entire presentation. So whenever I buy something from someone and they have to roll it up, I'm like, could I see a video of you rolling it up? I don't want a gorilla grip. I don't want to do any of that. So I think this is awesome. So dude, those are great picks. Adam, do you have a favorite of Brandon's picks?
Let's see here. I have to go with these zero
crazy
foil prints, and with the Japanese, because I love Japan and I love that style of art.
Yeah. Okay. That's a mutual. I mean, I agree with that. I think those are ones that I would pick. So I've got a couple that I feel like will still hit the mark. And these are ones that I would consider to be, well, let's get into it. Get into the next one.
Yeah, I haven't seen these. Let's see. Oh, I love these.
Yeah. Okay. So this is from an artist. My appreciation for a movie poster always has that storytelling element, right? And there's this guy that kind of came on the scene, younger guy named Ethan Pro, who does these are hand illustrated pieces, and I think the originals. But the only one that's left is actually The Force Awakens somehow, and it's like $4,000, which is totally fine considering it's the original work, and it's huge, right? So he had somebody else come in and do the prints for him. Now these are cliches, so these are not screen printed. If they get screen printed, I would have a very hard time not buying them. But there's something about the cliche that like I think is fine. But they're gorgeous pieces, and I probably will pick these up. But there's something about the emulation of the Struzan style that I love.
It's more romantic in a way. It's got like I don't know, it's softer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And as a series, I love the lightsabers going up. Again, you saw them on, zeros, but like that's, you've got the clash of Mystery Luke in the middle of The Last Jedi, which is an iconic moment. You've got the Falcon returning. You've got Rey's yellow saber. I mean, everything about it, I just think are fantastic. And oftentimes, like they were kind of shy about showing Palpatine, really in full, kind of in full color, in full appearance. So I love that Ethan decided to do the undead version of all the Sith in this way with the white eyes. It's just not a way that we traditionally see Palpatine fully exposed like that. And so the only issue that I have with it is just that we don't have the glowing red Kylo on the helmet. That's that's my only criticism of him. But in terms of going, iconic movie posters, it's very hard for me to look past these as going like, damn, if you wanted Struzan style in the sequel trilogy, which is criminally underrated and underrepresented in Star Wars, these are it. So I think that's a great set right there. So this next one here, so this is by Paul Mann, and Paul does traditional acrylic and oil painting. So these are all hand painted. When you see his work up close, it's beautifully crude. It does not do detail because his work is truly like you can see the layers and the depth of his paint on the canvas. And it's incredibly cool. And then also this guy, I mean, Brandon, I think you guys have worked with Mondo at the time, had worked with Paul all the time. The guy is a machine. He churns stuff out. The thing that I love about these in particular you've got Vader is a prevalent character throughout all of them. You've got you have what I look at them always as a trilogy. You've got Vader holding a blue saber, which I think is cool because in the one little moment of Vader realizing that he finally has Obi-Wan's weapon, when you think back to the prequels of, Kylo Ren and that saber's mine, and Obi-Wan took that from him after he basically turns him into Vader. So I love that Paul either did this unintentionally. There is a sliver of red on there, but it's very blue in the poster. I actually just sold this poster because I wasn't able to get the other ones. But the Empire one with the red, you've got the blue, the red, and the green. Of when we think of lightsabers, we think of those lightsabers in those movies. So I think this was absolutely crushed by Paul and the commissioners for this. You've got the throwback to Yoda as the toy with the snake around his neck and all of that, which I think is fantastic. And then you've got Cloud City, you've got a little Boba in there, and then of course Return of the Jedi I think absolutely crushes it. But again, kind of the Palpatine in the moment that we saw him with the yellow eyes and just the gross skin, and then of course the only criticism I have of these is give me some TIE interceptors.
Yeah,
it's the only criticism I have. So again, you can kind of see the theme of like what I'm into in terms of storytelling, and it's hard to look back on Star Wars without telling the story of what's your favorite moment in Star Wars in each movie. And some people can pick, I can't. That's what's hard for me. So Martin Anson, I think, is probably one of the raddest illustrators in the game. And I love, of course, too. And this isn't a dunk on anybody, but we have seen more of. Is this a studio thing, Brandon? You might know a little bit more about this, but is there approved poses? We're seeing a lot more art that's kind of designed off key art. The
reference photos, yeah. I don't want to just besmirch because you're right. Where there's a lot of these where you can tell what moment he pulled from.
Right.
What I will say, because I actually just sold I had the foil version of.
Sure.
I never could hang it, and do you know why? Because of a keyframe. I don't want to ruin this. But the Darth Vader is a still from Revenge of the Sith, I'm pretty sure, and it just always bugs me that it's not
the first one,
A New Hope, right?
Yeah, that's the promo image, yeah,
right. And so I'm just all right, what are we doing? Because what a lot of artists do, and but they go and they type in Darth Vader on Google Images, and they sort by high res image. Right. And a lot of times, and so there's one that I really love by Gabs. I don't know if that's on yours.
Yes.
But there's a Chewbacca Revenge of the Sith on that one, and it really bugs me.
And you know what? I will say this too, and you are in good company, because my thing. So you want to know the most tragic part of this is that, and we're, if you're listening on this podcast, you are an hour 20 in, and you are with us until the end.
Right.
Okay. Tyler Stout's Empire Strikes Back has the promo picture of Return of the Jedi Boba on it.
And it also has special edition Wampa on it, which is a little bit of a bummer.
You are right, and you cannot unsee it. And so, when it comes to those details, Vance Kelly has a great series that's got the bounty hunters on it, but it's got Boba, it's got Return of the Jedi Boba on it with properly colored. He's got the proper cape, but his gauntlets are Return of the Jedi style, painted green. It's little stuff like that I think is more so just funny to point out.
Right.
But you're accurate. You're absolutely right. Is that sometimes, and the reason I like Martin's stuff in general, besides I can understand where he's coming from. You're running out of time. You got to make these things. It's not like he didn't pack a lot of time into this poster. But I think really, what he kicked off with the Rogue One, which I think is his best one, really. It's got the movement, it's got the focus on Jyn Erso. You've got the Krennic from the trailer, which of course everyone has drawn that, but I think you've got very subtle with the Death Star in the background and the Death Star plans, and you've got the Battle of Scarif. I do like, there's a little nod to, I think, when how Stout kind of ran the other characters up top of his top or bottom. You've got these little circles in here that's got Galen and some of the other characters in here. Riz Ahmed's what was his name?
Bodhi.
Rogue One. Bodhi
Rook.
Bodhi Rook. That's right. So I think this was his best one, and then obviously it makes sense that the gallery bottleneck is like, hey, can you make us one for this and this?
Right.
So
I'm sure Jedi is coming.
Jedi is coming.
Gorgeous stuff. I just bought his. The way Martin Anson was discovered by Mondo was Rob Jones found his THX 1138 print. Which is beautiful, gorgeous, real simple, and I just picked up one.
Sure.
Because a Martin Anson poster is real great.
Yeah, they're really cool. So I think this is one of those posters that really could benefit from a credit block.
For sure.
I know that in some of these, and again too, that's the hard part between going between. I don't buy a lot of art prints, of course, as I'm sitting here like this, Jason Edmonston, buying all the eyes. This is one of those posters where I go, there's so much packed into it. Throw the credit block on there. So, I think it would benefit from it, but we're good. So give me the next set here.
Hey, before I do that, I also want to mention, talking about, images or things that are pulled from something that isn't from the film.
Sure.
Was it the official poster or the teaser poster for The Rise of Skywalker that used the Hot Toys Palpatine?
Yeah,
it was teaser.
Yeah.
Overlooking the moment with Rey and Kylo on the piece of the crashed Death Star.
Yeah, and with the gradient, they had the GIF of like the gradient backing all the way up, and you're like, we got it.
There's really no way around it. And what's funny about it is Hot Toys have arguably probably like the best photography out there, and their characters, their 6-scale characters, are so good, and the way that they photograph them, a lot of artists think they're getting away with something. By drawing over these characters. Now, I have a couple of them, and I've used them for poses because, sure, of course. But what, at $350 a pop, sometimes even more, I understand why people aren't buying them just for the poses. But another artist that I don't have is working here, but Tom Walker, I had actually reached out to him and I said, hey man, like, I'm 501st. I got a lot of friends who would love to be your character. Just let me know what poster you got coming up and I'll provide work for it, because they'll be accurate. And we were joking because there was one time where like he, you have an Empire Strikes Back Stormtrooper and a New Hope and no one cares about it but us. But like, I was like, dude, let us know. Like we're down to help, and people would love that stuff. And so I think it's funny when you find those mega nerds that are going to sit here and be like, I can't buy this poster. It's got the wrong gauntlets.
Right.
People have forgotten that that stuff exists. But we're out here, right? And here's three of us having a podcast discussion about it, and I think that's fantastic.
These are great.
These are really cool. So Ignacio RC, I don't know where Ignacio is from. I think he works a lot with Acme in the what's the Acme other side? Dark. Is it
Dark Ink?
Dark Ink?
No.
Yeah, I think that's what I think you're right. But there's, you have the Acme archives, and he's a Lucasfilm artist. But story driven, new poses. We've never seen these poses before. I love this stuff. I love the atmosphere of these posters. Again, if these had a credit block, I would be buying them. To your point, Brandon, you've got the focus is on Luke Skywalker, the hero's journey. You've got Tarkin. Tarkin doesn't get a lot of love a lot of times for how important he was in A New Hope. So I love any time that Tarkin, gets some love as another bad guy on a poster. I love that you've got the Venator, the Superstar Destroyers, they're called, in especially from this angle. I think a lot of times we see the AT-AT in this pose, but seeing those snow speeders fly over Fiends Norway, but of course Hoth at that time blew my mind of like how they floated and they were coming. I mean, this to me is like, I remember that shot. And so I love the atmosphere, the red dirt sand of Tatooine in the first one, the cold blue of Empire, and then of course the lush forest green of Endor for Return of the Jedi. I just think is fantastic. And then I love that you have the prevalent glow of Kyber green in Rogue One in this poster. And then you've got the iconic what do we call it, security gate on Naboo that Maul and Obi-Wan are separated by, is so present here for Maul, obviously setting off the fact that he's separating his lightsaber from Anakin, which is really what actually, Maul was instrumental in separating the Jedi in that regard. Plus you got the pod racers. I'm pretty much going to thumbs up anything with pod racers. But truly, I think Ignacio crushed these. If they had a credit block, if Lucasfilm would ever give us a credit block screen printed with these, I'm buying them day one.
These to me have like a Struzen vibe, but these look like extremely high-end novel covers.
Yes.
Like you would never see something this high quality on a book.
Right. They've got Legends vibe for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love these. So I thought these were fantastic, and I wanted to include those in there. And then, of course, Matt Ferguson. I got to shout it out. I got to shout out Ferg because, as someone who has done so much Star Wars work, and it's so different. And I actually love that as graphic designers have multiple stuff. Like he's done super clean, tight vector stuff, and then he does this like incredibly detailed, complex illustration.
I have that Empire design on a shirt actually, with the Japanese text.
Yeah, that was a box lunch. They did a whole run of that, right? Or whatever they did. And I love the fact that he did a solo poster that like never got a US release, and it frankly pisses me off because I love them. I love the movie Solo, and I love that he did 2 illustrations for this that I think were Cinemark overseas or AMC or Royal Theaters or whatever it was. I think they were like exclusive to, if you bought a ticket, you got this poster that they gave away, and it never came to the States. And I don't think this was ever produced in a poster at a 36 by 24 size. If you,
I've never seen the Solo or Rogue One posters, period.
I have the Rogue One.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's screen printed. It's gorgeous. It's kind of, Brandon, who's the other guy that does the little person, big sky? Andy Fairhurst.
Yes. Andy Fairhurst.
Yeah. Gorgeous poster here. Anytime there's Death Troopers on here, I'm in. But I think the only part that I didn't like about this was the little Jin. But
no, dude, it's David and Goliath. It's sick.
It's amazing.
And the symmetry and everything with the Death Star, it's so dope.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And you can clearly see at the time Empire and Rogue One were being worked on in a very similar, you've got a great perspective on it. But I think truly like in regards to Matt Ferguson now being an official Lucasfilm artist who's doing these posters, I'm so excited to see what he does for A New Hope. I'm curious as to what will be the focal point, if it's going to be Vader again, if it's going to be Luke looking into the Twin Suns, because even on episode 1 we had the Twin Suns on here through Beggar's Canyon, through Mos Espa. I'm kind of like, I wonder what he's going to do, but it's going to be awesome. So I think Matt Ferguson is a guy that you have to call out, and I know that it's official. It's kind of going against the alternative movie poster discussion that we have, but he started as an alternative movie poster artist. Got to give him credit where it's due. And I know that Jason Chiodo, one of our patrons and a good friend of ours, sent these over as a patron pick and was like, kind of got to include these. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And then my honorable mentions, Rory Kurtz, the Might of Milwaukee, is probably one of the, how would you describe Rory's style, Brandon? It's like hyper realistic, but
yeah, he is just insane. When he came onto the scene, not late, but he came onto the scene as a newcomer and just like blew the water, blew everyone out of the water, because it is so dynamic as well. The throne room one, I have the variant without the title, and it's just like a beautiful scene. It almost looks like a photograph, but it's not when you really look.
You can see all the line work in it. And Rory has done if Adam, have you ever seen a movie called Baby Driver?
Yeah.
So that poster that's got with the red Subaru and John Hamm and
that's right. Okay, yes, I have seen it, but I almost
every single canceled person ever in one movie.
They're all there. But that post, how it's kind of got like the half of his face and all the people are stacked up in it. That's the same artist. That's Rory Kurtz. And then his poster for Ex Machina is probably a definitive Mondo poster at this point of
my wife made me take that off the wall. I had the foil. She was like, why do you have this half naked woman on the wall? And I was like, listen,
you're like
Rory Kurtz.
But also you're like, if she comes over, we're all dead. It's going to be a bad time. So I would say, and Rory handles his own typography really well. And Rory's actually he's into props. He's like, hand paints his own helmets. I was riffing with him about how to paint a proper Mandalorian helmet in the proper Beskar with the paint and the chrome Alumoluster and all this stuff. So he's a true fan, insanely talented, but his posters to me set a scene. I would be interested to see his take on being able to do a whole poster rather than just a scene. But in regards to going honorable mentions of get a credit block on this Mandalorian one, I'm buying it. And then the other one, Tom Whalen. Clone Wars and Rebels, criminally underrated in regards to the alternative movie posters. Tom Whalen has done probably every Disney piece that you love. Tom Whalen is probably the artist who's done it. Vector artist, a lot of 2D stuff, but has such a brilliant way of approaching balance. I love the shadows that run off. It's a perfect companion piece between Clone Wars and Rebels. It hits on that animation style so well. And it feels like a Disney, Adam and I are always joking that like Clone Wars is a kid show. Rebels is a kid show that talks about genocide in the first episode. It's just truly his work is fantastic. I love that Sabine is a little understated in this and, kind of fitting among the Grand Inquisitor. And you've just got these purple tones in both posters. I think these are both the regs. The variants were a little bit different, but if I could pick these up, I will certainly be doing so, because in terms of, I wish they had the voice actors listed on here as credit blocks. But in terms of, it's got the old Ahsoka style. This is definitely season 1 through 4, certainly. But who doesn't love a tiki statue, Dooku?
Yes.
You know what I mean? You love that.
Yeah.
his head's 8 feet tall. But these, I think these are fantastic, and Tom's style is so iconic. He was the perfect artist to nail these. So honorable mention.
And I love that it unifies the two big animated series with one style, with this like 2D cell animation kind of thing.
Yes.
Because Rebels, that animation style isn't for everyone.
Right.
This poster brings it. I mean, it puts it. It's almost like what was the original non-canon now? Clone Wars. What's the director?
Genndy or Tartakovsky.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's closer to that, and putting them both series here and closer to that style. It's really cool.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
It's amazing. So yeah, that's my honorable mentions, and then go to the next slide.
Well, I might have an honorable mention as well.
Well, tell me what it is.
Well, I'm gonna upload it right now. I didn't want to upload it too quickly and spoil it.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure, I get that.
And I didn't know what.
Well, wait, hey, you got to go through mine. What is your favorite out of my picks?
I'm gonna say Matt Ferguson. Just I love that Empire design. That's one of my favorite shirts, and I can't even wear it anymore because it's wrecked.
Sure. We'll get you a new one. I think we know where to go.
Yep. My honorable mention.
I can see this from the thumbnail. Dan Mumford.
Yep.
Love it.
Brandon, what's the story with Dan Mumford? This guy, talk about making a poster for every single of your favorite franchise.
I know. He's so great. And then I love he did so many for Force Awakens, right? Yeah. But just the style and the fluidity. Why do you like it, Adam?
I like this. What would you call it? It's like hyper realistic illustration.
Yeah.
It's like clearly illustration, but it's also got this like really high contrast shadows versus light, kind of like if you were to boost the structure knob on a photo in like your standard photo editing app, whatever.
Right.
It really thickens like all the crevices and things in a way that almost makes it like it's dehydrated in a way.
Sure.
And it's like I can just like feel it. Like you can touch this image, and I think I remember seeing an album cover that he did.
Oh yeah, he's
years ago, and I was like, "Who is this guy? This is sick. We should try to get this guy to do one of ours." And then I just saw him everywhere. I was like, "Oh, that's spoiled. Never mind." But yeah, I like how it feels tactile in a way.
Yes, yeah, and I think Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but so he did a bunch of is it theater exclusives? These were like AMC,
was it AMC? Yeah, it was an AMC mini poster. Yeah.
The IMAX. So in the patron chat, 43% Burn Anakin, still the best screen name.
Right.
Called that out. Yeah, he did one for every film, over the course of the 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, and I think they were served like it was almost like Friday. I think it was even hyper focused. It was like Friday's poster, Saturday's poster.
Yeah.
And I think he did. I mean, there's a whole collection that he did just for the Force Awakens. But in terms of, and his style is kind of the, little person, big scene. A lot of his stuff is he doesn't do a whole lot of portraits. It's a lot of atmospheric stuff,
silhouettes.
But in regards to going, man, you pick your favorite movie, he's done it. And it's,
what else?
Insane.
You know what else appeals to me? I think it is slightly reminiscent of Pusshead.
Oh yeah,
and being a big Metallica fan, having all those old Metallica shirts, I think that's subconsciously kind of what draws me to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Pusshead, God Machine, a lot of those guys that kind of really hit that like metal. The stuff looks like skulls and everything's
skin
falling, a little drippy, a little fleshy. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good pick, Adam. Out of nowhere. Yeah, that's awesome. What you were working on.
Good stuff.
Nice, dude. Okay. And then here we go. This was a mutual honorable mention from Brandon and I. J.J. Harrison does this private commission of Star Wars Holiday Special. Which
it's beautiful, dude.
It's such a fantastic poster. And I actually just picked this up on eBay for $80.
Oh, nice. I should do that.
I got a score on this bad boy. And guess what's going up this holiday season? This damn poster right here, showing off B. Arthur pouring beer into people's heads. We've got Lumpy on here. We've got Scratchy. We've got add a little bit the cooking show.
Yeah.
And we've got, Cocaine Carrie Fisher. I mean, everything about it is just fantastic.
Dude, you know what my favorite thing about this is? And I don't know how on purpose this was. I think the likeness that is furthest off from the actual person is Mark Hamill, is Luke.
For sure.
And that's how it is in the show.
Exactly. Like, so did he kind of blow it on the likeness on purpose? Because he just looks so bizarre and jacked up in the actual holiday special.
Harrison looks exactly like Harrison Ford.
Yes.
And so you know that he can do.
Yeah, if you can do a Harrison, you can do anybody, right?
100%. But I mean, just the whole like Life Day Chewie. But I mean, everything about, and then the boba, the animated boba is so good, right? And then the plastic Mark Hamill is all time. So this disaster of a show, immortalized with a credit block in a screen printed poster. This is a pickup for me, and I'm glad that we both mentioned this, Brandon, is like, this one is awesome.
It's great. Right.
Sick. Now from the patrons.
Ooh. Oh, nice.
So I asked the patrons, I said, what, when you guys think of non-official Star Wars art, our buddy Jason called out, is it Isa or Eyes?
I don't know. I say Issei, but that's probably wrong too.
That could be work, but Issei, which sounds good to me, is a Thai artist and does these, hyper structured full. I mean, I think they've done 4 Star Wars.
Yeah, and then they just finished Lord of the Rings too. I know that.
And it's all kind of built within this circular structure, which is really cool. So of however you would dial the, in this particular scene, like I mean, there is graphic design going on here with this. And I love, I love it's a little heavy, from my personal liking. There's not a lot of space to breathe, but in terms of the execution of this, with the little details of the, you've got the Death Star pieces, you got the Death Star walls of the pill pattern. It is so well done. I bet it looks amazing in person. I think Star Wars is just one of those things where I can't just have one. I have to buy the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to like look at this and go, I can't fall in love with it too much because I'll want it. But in terms of going, this is a damn packed poster, I completely think this one is crushed.
I love that she nailed the Uncanny Valley Princess Leia. Like that's top. But then she did A New Hope Tarkin, it looks like, and not Rogue One Tarkin.
Yeah.
Right.
But the Leia is great.
Yeah, and then we're talking about, where's borrowed imagery from? I think that's a Revenge of the Sith Vader right there.
Yeah, I that Vader showed up a lot. I think that's also on that Rogue One Martin Anson too. And it's either Revenge of the Sith, or it might be. I was trying to find it because it was bugging me. There's a Star Wars Galaxies.
Okay.
The video game.
I want to say that this Vader has his arms crossed.
Yeah, it's like a very specific.
Sure.
Isn't it also like? Doesn't it look like an early, in the 3D printing days, 3D model that someone would have done where they didn't quite get the curves right, like the eyebrows and the dome are a little too round.
Sure. Well,
weird stuff like that.
I can almost lay the reference photo right on top of this because it's that well done. But it is funny for hyper fans who are like looking at that stuff. I love that you've got the deleted scene of the this was from what's his name's cut. This is the who's the original director. It's late Gareth here in Michigan. Gareth Edwards' cut that had.
You're talking about the trailer.
The trailer that had, you've got.
You
Krennic,
shot a bunch of extra stuff.
And you've got Krennic walking over the water with his cape in the water, and then you've got the stormtroopers walking through the water. All that was cut, but I like that this was added in here. This is kind of a funny little piece to it. But you've got the Citadel, you've got all of these things. The Cavern Angels, you've got Saw Gerrera. I mean, this one is pretty rad in regards to how much is packed in here. K2SO getting the love. And then this one that was new from the patrons, Andrew DeGraff, which I think is super funny. Kind of one of these like off kilter art pieces that kind of shows. It's almost like, how would you describe this? It's like a video game, like a
to me it looks
multi-level.
like it looks like a mid-century
deconstruction or something.
Deconstruction diagram kind of thing.
Sure.
Like you would find in a like a how-to book or something.
Yeah. So one of our patrons, I think it was Julia or someone, shared it and was like, I have this on a t-shirt. And I was like, well, I've never seen this before. This is awesome. So the artist is Andrew DeGraff. Have you seen these before, Brandon? Or have you seen this
I want to say that they're either Hero Complex or Gallery 1988. But
this is official.
Well, in the sense of it's not official because they do unlicensed,
right.
but he did multiple movies like this, which is very cool. I love it. And like it's fun to chart the path and to see what's going on.
Sure. I love that. And then the next one, of course, is Todd Slater. If you are a fan of, if you're a fan of gig posters, if you're a fan of skateboarding, Todd Slater is one of those. A little on the punky side, almost like I would say wood carving, very kind of rough illustration style that just works every time he makes something. So a lot of people very geeked on Todd Slater stuff, which I agree is an iconic artist that cannot be not mentioned whenever you talk about alternative art, alternative work. And then down to one that I wholeheartedly agree with, another person who has done so much Star Wars stuff, Pablo Oliveira. I would like give the man the damn credit blocks. Like he's ready to make a poster right now. I love this series from the original trilogy. These are like incredibly this is like 36 by 8 or something, some crazy aspect ratio. Or these might be 12 by 36. I can't remember.
There's something crazy. Yeah.
They're goofy, but I love that there's just a snippet of the scenes, right? And it almost looks like he started with the Falcon and then just kind of said, go up from there. And the Return of the Jedi one I wasn't able to fit on here is Luke standing in front of Jabba, about to be dropped into the Rancor pit. But Pablo has done, if you Google search Pablo Oliveira Star Wars, I mean, his Mandalorian season 2 poster is amazing. His Mandalorian season 1 poster is amazing. He has done so much Star Wars work and it's all fantastic. So I don't know, Brandon, do you know, is he a digital artist or is he traditional?
I actually don't know where he works, but okay. I assume it's digital just based on A, how much he puts out, but B, just the details on it. But yeah, really some fantastic stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's so good. So yeah, you've got, I mean, and that goes to show you it's like amazing artists that don't, you can't get a lot of amazing visual artists that don't have an appreciation for Star Wars. So, there's kind of that, it makes sense of why they're all in here. So I think the patrons crushed this. I love these selections. Yeah. Good picks, patrons, good picks.
Well done.
Yeah. So what do we got? I think we're closing it out with, there's one more slide, isn't there?
I don't know. Is there? I think that's it.
Sweet. Well, so anyways, I mean, that's our pick. I mean, Adam, looking back at all of these, we've just given you a crash course in nearly everything Star Wars alternative movie posters. Is there one that you're still resonating with when you think about it? I want to know the patrons' thoughts too, because I know the patrons are talking about it right now.
I mean, it's really hard not to pick the Ali Moss stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think this was the first poster when I started thinking, oh, what could I get that would go in the house that wouldn't just annoy the shit out of my wife,
Yeah.
I was like, something clean and kind of modern looking, and I found these, and this sent me further down the rabbit hole than anything else. Right. So, I mean, the silhouettes, the use of the different elements to create the eyes of each character. It's
so smart.
It's genius.
Yeah. And there's a reason they're iconic. So yeah, I don't know. I hope people too realize that this is, a lot of this stuff was just, it was a passion project. I mean, Brandon, is that the way to describe Mondo at the time of kicking it off?
Especially at the time that it was first started. It was just people that wanted to be creative and wanted to show off that, their love of movies and work with other talented people. And it really kind of has turned into this much larger economy at this point, but it's a fun world to play in. And if I'm spending money, I might as well be spending money on art, right? So it all works out.
That is so true.
Yes,
so
sir.
yeah, I think all in all, and I hope this gets shared, this conversation gets shared a little bit with the right other people who appreciate this, because I know that there's a lot of geeky poster collectors out there, but I think we hit the gamut pretty good. But yeah, all in all, I could look at Star Wars art all day, and I love seeing people's different interpretations of what Star Wars is to them, and it's really an incredible thing that every year we get a whole nother set of Star Wars stuff, and most of these artists are not even the European artists. We have a lot of Polish, Hungarian, Chinese, French artists that were making stuff in the 70s that was insane. Like it is crazy how out there Bauhaus and some of these other just truly off the wall posters that were represented basically in those markets was so very cool at how they did that. So we could do a whole another episode on that. But all in all, I mean, Brandon, give us an update of what you've got coming out besides the book. What's up with Funko? What's up with anything?
Yeah,
because I want people to follow along with you, because I'm sure they enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely follow along at Talking Bay 94, which is where my show is, which again, I interview cast and crew of Star Wars. Most recent today, episode with Ahmed Best came out.
It's awesome.
Which is very exciting. But yeah, some really great people over the years I've been really proud of interviewing. And then, yeah, keep an eye peeled on StarWars.com and then Star Wars Insider, because some pretty crazy pieces are coming through there as well. So that's where you can find me. I'm everywhere. I'm annoying. But this has been great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have to bring you back on when the book comes out, because we always like kind of
for sure.
When we get, I mean, my book, I'll send you a text of my Star Wars book collection.
Please. You can see mine behind me, and you can see the shelves sagging, about to crush me, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it going, oh yeah, I got a couple of those for sure. I like that. I like that. So yeah, it's awesome. Well, Brandon, again, you can find Brandon at Talking Bay 94. Find him on the gram, on the threads, on all that stuff.
Everywhere.
And obviously you'll see him. Are you planning on going to Japan? Are we going to see you in Japan?
I have my tickets to Japan. I have my plane ticket at my hotel. I will see you in Japan.
That is awesome. Yeah. Did you? And then of course, like, just to mention the badge art that just came out. You saw that?
Insane! Insane. I love it.
I was telling a friend of mine, I'm like, I don't want to. It's going to be an expensive trip as is. The fact that there's going to be like so many artists there that I probably wouldn't have had access to getting their art, and then I'm going to go over there. I'm going to have to do a lot more freelance work. Let's put it that way, because I have a feeling it's going to be a very dangerous time for me. So that's like your point. If you're going to spend money, you might as well spend it on art. So we're jamming, man.
Good stuff. Well, we're wrapping it up. So if you're a patron, we're wrapping it up. But if you're a patron, the after show segment, which you can get access to at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod. The question from the Kelly Knox Star Wars chat pack in the category of technology, a classic one. Sort of a what's your rapid fire thing in Armor Party called again?
Lightning round.
The lightning round. Well,
Force lightning round.
Force lightning round. What is your favorite Star Wars starship? That's what we're gonna do while we're talking about favorites. So
bingo.
That is in the bonus segment for patrons. Again, patreon.com/thankthemakerpod. Brandon, thanks again for being here. This has been super fun, and we'll be stoked to have you back.
Would love to. Anytime.
And until next time, may the Force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.